Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you listen to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 741. My name is Eric Nielsen, and with me today, I don't have a co-host today. Corey Romero is out of town, and Bob Plankers is off being Bob. So, going to run this solo today, but we're going to have a lot of fun because we're going to talk about AI. On the show today, we're going to be talking to Rajesh Kadam. He is CEO for PipeIQ, and we're going to be talking about cloud workloads, AI cloud workloads, and what they experienced over at PipeIQ, and where the workloads are going. And we'll talk about the workloads for the AI models, and obviously VMware has private AI, and we'll talk about the models, and where does it make sense to run them, and what PipeIQ has discovered while they were doing their products in market. So we'll talk to Rajesh in a minute, but before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the news. So it is Wednesday, October 1st, 2025. Happy Halloween. We're coming into that month where Halloween's going to be happening. Lots going on. We've got Explore on Tour. Explore on Tour is going to be happening in Germany and in Paris this month. So pay attention. I know they've got a big VMUG cruise happening on the Seine. If you're going to be going to Explore on Tour in Paris, look for registering for that cruise. I think they have 50 to 80 slots. Don't quote me on the number, but you can get your tickets for that at the community booth in the hub on Explore and Tour in Paris. So be aware of that. If you want to get on that cruise, you got to register, get yourself a ticket. I know there is a VMUG in Germany. They're going to have a meetup. There's something going on there too. So in the evening, if you want to meet your fellow Germans, look for that one as well. So a lot of excitement going on for Explore. I know that the London one was all booked up. So we have no more seats for London. I think we had 800 people at Explore on Tour. So, if you're going to go, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff going on. Keynotes on the 9 Cloud Foundation, a lot of activity. I felt like the London one was just like Explore, right? Mini Explore in the sense that it was a day and a half. Free certification for VCF 9 if you want to do your admin or architecture cert. Go check that out. There's a lot going on there. A lot of people, have got that. VMUG Advantage obviously has VCF 9. We're getting ready for that launch. So expect that launch in November. So if you have bought your Advantage and you have gotten your cert, you will be able to get a 128 core license for VMUG Advantage. So, that's also going on, and a reason to get certified, as we've talked about on the podcast several different times. So I think that's mostly what's going on in the news. We're kind of wrapping up. There is a big VMUG virtual event happening in early November. You can go register for that. Go to vmug.com, register for the virtual event. A lot of stuff going on there. They're accepting paper requests. I've got a paper in on how to navigate the Advantage portal to get your VCF 9 licenses in November. So that'll time with the launch of the fully functioning VCF 9 portal for Advantage. And people talk about the tokens. You need tokens, and we've been running on the 90-day license for VCF 9. If you've got your VCF 9 installed and running at home, people ask me what's going to happen if the 90-day licenses run out. We are launching the VMUG Advantage portal in November that will give you tokens. So you will log into your VCP portal. If you got the licenses, it takes you and gets you the tokens based on your 128 core license. So we've got that built in. We're running testing on that, thanks to some of the community members that are volunteered to be beta testers. So work going on there. Expect fully VCF 9 by the end of this year. And therefore, if you get out to Explore on Tour and you want to get certified, I know people are passing. So look for that. Go to the Code YouTube channel, youtube.com/VMware Code. And we have training on how to pass your certification. We have training for the VCF admin certification. So go watch that. If you watch that, you'll learn kind of like what you need to learn about Tanzu, what you need to learn about automation, and enough automation, enough Tanzu, and if you've already know a little bit of vSAN, a little about NSX, a little about ESX, you should be able to pass. Having said that, I know people that have failed. I know people that have passed, and so you have to get a D. So you got to get 60% of all the questions right to pass the test. So it's doable. And again, the test is free. It's part of your Explore on Tour Pass. So go check out that and make that happen. Other than that, I think that most of us are pretty excited about VCF 9. And I know William Lamb and I have been working on putting a GPU in the Miniform Nooks, right? Or the Miniform Mini PCs for $800. Runs VCF 9. I had that at Explore in Vegas. I took the same machines to Explore in London. And, we'll publish those slides. So you can get a sub 1,000 machine that'll run VCF 9. And those machines have a PCIe slot in them. With a PCIe slot, you can put a GPU in it. With a GPU in it, you can run private AI. And so that transitions us to private AI, which is what we're going to talk about in the podcast, because myself and William are getting ready to publish the how to run your local VCF 9 with a GPU in a sub $1,000 machine, which only takes about 60 watts. So that's a doable scenario. So with that, I want to introduce our guest that we have on the show today, which is Rajesh Kadam. Rajesh, welcome to the Community Podcast.
Thank you.
We are a community podcast, so of course we start each show with new guests by asking them, tell us who you are. We want to know who you are. We are a community podcast. Give us your career arc. Where did you go to college? How long have you been out in the industry? You got 2 or 3 minutes here to talk about how did you get here? Why are you doing AI? And what is PipeIQ? And how did you get here? So elevator pitch on who you are and how did you get here?
Awesome. Thank you, Eric, first of all, for having me on the show. Wonderful to be here. Eric, I've been in the Valley for the last 20 years or so, right? And before that, sort of came to the US from India for graduate school, and then decided to stay. And technology has always sort of been I don't know whether in my DNA, but been a big passion of mine always. So Silicon Valley was like a natural gravitating point for me, right? And over these last 20 years, worked with startups of different kinds. All of that was around in the go-to-market side of things, right? And the last 2.5 years, I've run PipeIQ, which is an AI agent startup. And we have been looking at sort of predictive data trends, right? So both for go-to-market sort of situations where you got to, sort of figure out what's the next purchase that a company might be interested in doing or a, buying group. But also looking at sort of alternate data for investment decisions as well for the investment asset industry. So with AI as a specific asset category. So we've been sort of really looking at data and how agents can go out and get some of these data points and bring them and, how can we form a narrative, a story that can predict what are overall themes that can potentially impact, predict where the market is going. So that's sort of my background in terms of, I think maybe I should just spend 30 seconds on how I got here in terms of from an AI standpoint. So I used to work on conversational AI pre-ChatGPT, and then when ChatGPT came along in November 22, it was just like, oh my God, this is going to completely change, right? How we're going to do things on the go-to-market side with conversational AI. So I decided to go all in, and that's how I sort of started my journey with Gen AI, and it's been amazing, right? I think it's just continues to leapfrog, and it doesn't fail to amaze me every day I use it. So the tech.
So when you started to get into AI, right? You started looking at having on-prem compute resources to run your models, right? And you have to run your models, and then you have to build agentic responses from those models, right? So you have a double thing. You're not just doing LLM that's doing voice. You're actually looking at doing pipeline optimization using agentic technologies, right? Or, agent actions, right? I call them. And so, and you have training workloads, but you also have inference runtime workloads as well, right? So all of this, when you're building an AI solution, right? And enterprises or startups, you have to deal with one, what model are you, going to run? How are you going to do augmented training for that model? And then for your world, you actually have to have it do things, right? For your customer base. And the do thing is then another piece of AI that has to be built, right? So 1, get your model. 2, train your model. 3, build agentic responses to your model, and then 4, have enough compute resources to run it all. Right. And then you're weaving AI solutions together from this. So it's kind of like building any kind of software. You don't start writing C libraries, right? You grab other people's libraries and you build. In this case, you're building cloud services together, right? In order to build your solutions. So, and there is, you've run workloads in the past on vSphere, right? Traditional VM application workloads. But now when you get into the AI business, the easy thing from way I chatted with you before the show is to start picking cloud services, right? Go to Amazon, go to Azure, go to Google, and you did all that, right? You've gone through choosing cloud workloads. What are the pros and cons of that approach?
I mean, look, I think when you're starting off, cloud feels like a much easier choice because you don't have to run the infrastructure and so on and so forth, right? Everything is deployed out there. But in the early days, say in early 2023, all of 23, it was so hard to even get compute capacity on, say, Microsoft or on Amazon, AWS Bedrock, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, compute capacity was really hard to get by. If you wanted a particular cutting edge, leading edge model, well, that's not available for you yet, and so on and so forth, right? So there are a lot of constraints. So, but I think as the industry has matured, right, in the last year or two, now there is much more sort of technical capacity and skill in actually knowing how to deploy these own models on-prem if you wanted to, right? And I think from a pro and con sort of standpoint, with cloud, you can get started quickly. There's maybe a choice of multiple models. If a new model is introduced, it's already available for you fairly quickly today, right? So you don't have to worry about sort of load balancing and so on and so forth, right? But I think the con really, especially from an enterprise customer standpoint, if you're working with enterprise, even mid-sized companies, always the question is data, right? What are you going to do? What are you doing with my data? Where is my data going? Are you using it for training and so on and so forth, right? So I think these kind of questions, honestly, are much easier to handle in an on-prem environment, certainly, right? So where the models come to the data rather than the data going to the models, right? Or you could
I know Amazon and some of these guys in the early days had you could go get a FedEx data container and fill up all your data and ship it to them, right? And there was ways to get your data. Just volume wise is a challenge, but let alone security and everything else, and your customers. Idea that you putting your data in a multi-tenant environment, right? It becomes it's a con, right? To running this stuff in the cloud.
I mean, look, this has happened in the past with CRM, right? Like Salesforce, right? Like nobody was willing to, hey, how can we put our data in the cloud? I think over time, right, cloud services have become more and more acceptable, right? And where companies are willing to trust their data with third-party providers sitting in, the customer in the vendor's environment, right? But I think with AI, there's maybe it's a more nuanced, more difficult question around data, right? So because you are going to be using all of the organization's data, and especially when you think of agents and orchestration, you may have code models running for days on end, right? And even months on end, maybe 3-4 years from now. I mean, that's the sort of prediction, right? Azim Azhar has come up with how the compute or agentic workflows, how long can they run without human intervention? So he's kind of come up with a benchmark index, right? So you can see, I mean, per that sort of prediction, by 2029, 2030, things could be running for months on end, right? Without human intervention and at 99% accuracy. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, these are all sort of spitballing, right? We have no idea, right, where these are going to end up. But But the point is, if you're going to run these kind of workloads and this kind of intensity where the AI model is like basically, should we say, has carte blanche sort of access to lots of different services within your organization, you really kind of begin to wonder, hey, is this just sort of better suited for doing things within my organization, right? Within my sort of perimeter, right? VPC, if you will, right? Even, right? But I think the biggest challenge there is that, like, I mean, if you think of open source models, right? Like, I think they haven't, I mean, obviously they're useful, but clearly Mark Zuckerberg seems to be on a sort of a defensive footing with all these llama models, etc. ChatGPT, OpenAI, so to speak, seems to just kind of battling through things. So, I mean, there's some questions here on the effectiveness of some of these open source models, right? So if you're going to do this in-house, right, you have to think about what the architecture is going to be. Is it sort of vSphere, like VMware, right? I mean, right, in your data center, are you going to go to Databricks or Snowflake, right, where you get a sort of model catalog and so on? So
one of the things that I see is a pattern here is back in the 2000s, right? Everybody jumped on the internet, right? Everybody had to have internet. Everybody had to have internet services. Everybody had Apache web server databases. Everything had to be done right away. And like, we had server sprawl beyond belief because it was a rush to get there, right? It was the land grab, right? Diane Green, founder of VMware, used to say it's just a big land grab. Everybody's just trying to get land and get property, get set up. And so server sprawl became just massive, right? And then virtualization came along and started optimizing, right? So yeah, we had server sprawl, but we could consolidate all those operating systems onto one machine. So all of a sudden we have 20 of this server sprawl consolidated down to one machine. So it got server sprawl under control. Then you can start managing all these servers because you can have visibility into what they're all using and how much workload are they actually running, right? Because everybody went out and just immediately had to have it. And I feel like there's a similar thing going on now in models, AI models, right? Where every department and his brother has an idea of how AI is going to, solve their problem. We're doing with vExperts right now. We're building a vExpert model that allows vExperts instead of a blog, but to submit information that we're going to publish into the different AI models, right? And so, we're just me and Corey Romero, just a little team, and yet here we are. We're off running on how to do this, right? And we're land grabbing, right? And now, 400 other Erics out there are also land grabbing their AI ideas. And all of a sudden you get like AI sprawl, model sprawl. Everybody is out there. And like, well, one thing is I'm not using the GPU all the time. I can't even get GPUs. I got GPUs. I bought some GPUs. Now I got some GPUs until I start running my models and I'm consuming, but I'm not consuming over the weekends. I'm not, when we want to do something, we run it, right? But most of the time it's idle, right? Which is kind of so what happened in the server sprawl days where you had land grabs for the internet. Now we're seeing land grabs, but we're seeing GPU sprawl. And the GPUs aren't 100% utilized, right? And so cloud helps you with that a little bit because you put it in the cloud. Right. The cloud is only billing you, except if you pin the GPU, then you're paying for the GPU whether you use it or not, right? And you guys ran into that, right? It gets pretty expensive.
It does get expensive, actually,
And so that's where now, if you start bringing this back in-house, one, you can start doing GPU consolidation, right? You can get visibility into what GPU is actually being used. Right. What GPU is just stuck on for some fucking reason because, somebody didn't turn the model off. They're not even using it, but they're grinding. It's grinding, right? It's consuming resources. So you kind of, and then over time we were able to then consolidate, load balance, share, and then even in memory situations, right? Like we can share memory between models, and therefore the cloud can do that, but I guarantee they're charging you. Everybody is paying for their memory usage, regardless of whether the platform underneath is actually sharing the memory, right? Across. If everybody's running a Llama 5 or you can share that. So in our private AI instance, we can actually share memory, share GPUs, share resources, and actually optimize it, right? Like if you remember in the old days, you compile libraries statically, then we developed shared memory libraries, and all of a sudden, anybody that's using that segment of code is just it's only one segment coded in memory, right?
Right.
And so that kind of stuff is starting to happen where you get optimization based on visibility of how many orgs are running what AI models.
Right.
And then VMware in private AI is blessing those models. We're actually running them, make sure they're stable, bring them in so that you one button click, spin up a model, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you don't have to go grab it, download it, open source it, or wherever you're going to get it. It's just in the platform, right?
No, I think, I mean, Eric, if what VMware is providing is the ability to just, if somebody is using the, let's say Llama 5 or, so on and so forth, that one model, if 10 people spin it up, it's all coming from the same sort of source, and you're able to bolt on sort of RAG infrastructure in a common fashion. I think that's a huge win. I mean, no doubt about it, because again, I think otherwise sprawl is inevitable, number one. Number two, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If one group is learning something and the results are coming through, it should be usable by other team members, other teams as well. So any sort of shared infrastructure, I think, is great. I mean, the question I'd have for you, honestly, is like, if you use a Together AI or some other cloud provider, right? Like, I mean, would we get the same kind of advantages or not, right? Would be sort of one of the questions, right? And I mean, like, I think once you start getting to scale, I mean, these things become they get expensive quickly, right? So
well, let's talk inference for a little bit, right? Because most people aren't going to be doing that much training. They're just going to get the thing set up, get some RAG augmentation, some training, but then they're just going to run it, right? And then running it, as you discover with PipeIQ, right? Like as you get customer scale out, right? The numbers get big and it gets expensive. And then how much revenue are you generating, and how much cloud compute resources are you actually consuming to acquire new customers and get those customers and satisfy those customers? And it's like all of a sudden it becomes very real, right? Because you get 20 grand bills a month. Right? And you have to cover that, right? You have to cover whatever your enterprise bill is there, where I feel like there's, a bit more control when you have on-prem, right? You're buying the compute resources, you're scaling it out, and you get visibility across that. And, you can build up your own inference. And I'm not sure cloud is an advantage when you're consuming a lot of CPU cycles. If you're spinning up Christmas workloads or you're spinning up really spiky, things, then the cloud, just say, hey, give me some cloud. Right. I just need some compute resources, and I'll pay double for it because I just don't want to deal, because it's a spike and then it goes away. But if you got AI workload and it's it's running, why would you not just buy some big iron, put them in racks and spin them up, and you can amortize that over 4 years or 5 years, not every month from a cloud provider.
Yeah.
The other thing it gets me though is like, the big models are there, but I know that PipeIQ built, use the SaaS services like it's called Hugging Face or
I mean we
where you were picking services, and I'm not sure if you can actually bring some of those services online, and so then you're tying your on-prem with those services, right? And that gets a little more dicey.
Yeah. I mean, if you have sort of API services, let's say you're calling OpenAI's backend or Perplexity's backend, right? Like via API, how are you going to kind of orchestrate that, right? Like, I mean, in a on-prem environment, of course, you're going to just call those APIs. So then your token costs kind of stay constant, right? Like as far as inferencing costs are concerned. Right, I don't see there's like going to be a huge difference, right? But I mean, if you're a big enough customer, then I think an enterprise deployment for OpenAI is a possibility. But at that point, right, you're already probably thinking on-prem already, and like I think vSphere would be an amazing sort of complement in those kind of situations. But
and much like Kubernetes, it kind of reminds me of Kubernetes. Like when Kubernetes showed up, everyone, oh my god, we got to go to communities. It's like you got all these different Kubernetes options and different layered apps that are out there. But over time, that all consolidated, and now customers are just buying Kubernetes from VMware. We call it Tanzu, right? And run it in the data center of vSphere just like we ran everything else, right? Like, but it took 8 years for that
consolidation.
Yeah, that excitement of Kubernetes to kind of settle into like, look, just runs on vSphere like everything else. It's just another workload. right? And then if you've already got the infrastructure already set up and you're already maintaining all that infrastructure anyway, why not just make it run AI workloads as well and move on?
Yeah, of course. I think NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, I think, is increasingly talking about how he's calling it accelerated computing, right? Like, so general purpose computing, and there's accelerated computing, right? Like, and accelerated computing being the implication for like sort of AI workloads and so on. But I think there is an interesting trend here about like modernizing your infrastructure, your general compute infrastructure that you already have. So I think that is inevitable, obviously, and that's going to happen. So I think folks like, fintech banks and other large infrastructure players, right, who are already doing a lot of on-prem stuff, I think for them, this is probably going to be a natural choice extension to just sort of try to do, all these models run them in-house, right? And get the infra. And, to be fair, right, Eric, I think you would agree that all of this requires some DevOps expertise, spend, right? That comes along with the territory. So depends on, the size of your workloads and, scaling, right? Like, what kind of scale are we talking about? So I think it entirely depends on that. So cloud might be a great choice in some situations, and under the assumption that maybe, an AWS is already using vSphere on their compute cloud to optimize things. But of course, it's going to be more expensive for you as an end customer, right? Versus a very large bank or like a JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or something, right? And they'd be able to, take advantage of this sort of in in-house fashion. So I think there's a little bit of a bifurcation there. And we have all these neo clouds, right? Like CoreWeave or Nebius, right? And then there's probably going to be multiple of those in the coming years. All of these, again, are all going to be independent clouds, right?
And then I guess I got to ask you, like, we only have an hour for a podcast here, so I'll move on to some a bit more topics, which is I believe that there's going to be AI consolidation as well, right? So everybody went in the grab land. Everybody's grab land, but in the last month or two, I've just heard like, hey, some of this stuff's not profitable, right? 80-90% of AI dreams have not paid off, right? And so certainly it will pay off. There are some really crazy, great, instances of AI, right? And I'm exposed to them every day, but financial models, like just because you can dream it, then you can build it, and then you can put it on servers, doesn't mean that it's going to pay for itself, right? And I think a lot of people, as they've spun up these greenfield environments, they've had no financial responsibilities. Everybody's like, go get it. Here's your budget. Here's $20 million. Go spend it and get going. Buy some GPUs. As everybody starts looking at it, I think there's going to be consolidation on service. There's going to be consolidation on platforms. There's going to be consolidation all over the place, because eventually this stuff has to make
deliver money. Of course. Right. No, I think the relevant maybe sort of.
Did you experience some of that?
Yeah, no, look, getting these agents to work is sort of has been difficult. I'd say we are in October now, right? I think over this past 8 or 9 months, a lot of people, including us, have faced difficulties in getting these agents to work. What kind of abstractions to use? Are you going to use, a LangChain or LangGraph? And, there might be some unnecessary complexity. But if you put in the complexity, you got to get these agents to talk to each other, right? And then if agent, the probability, like the quality of the output of each agent then cascades. It's a domino effect, right? Like the output accuracy that you get of the overall agents that you have, I think very quickly begins to sort of show up in terms of the quality of the output, right? So, that's kind of going down a little bit into the weeds, but there was a MIT study, I think about 3-4 months ago, probably the audience knows about this, but like the study did a survey of enterprises, and the striking thing was like 95% of deployments were not sort of delivering value, right? There was no ROI, right? So there was that.
That's what I was talking about. They hit the
news. Right.
They're not
delivering value. So, and a corollary to that you sort of hear about lately in the last week or two is that, hey, these days it's easier to land, right? So because everybody has an AI budget, an experimental budget, so they'll you can get a foot into the door and do an AI project, right, based on that experimental budget that people have. but the real thing is in the expand, right? Like now, did you deliver?
Yeah.
You know, if you deliver, then of course, right? People are willing to, right? So I think the expand part is the difficulty, right? Like, so if you're somebody delivering to the semiconductor industry for example, some of these semiconductor companies might give you just like 600-700K check, right, to start a pilot. Okay, I'm told, which is great, right? But then the question is, okay, if it doesn't deliver, then they're not, it's not going forward, basically. So I think that's the real litmus test, essentially. Now is kind of the thing for especially startups and other folks in the space.
Well, even enterprises will then. You start looking at what your AWS spend is, and how could you do it cheaper? How could you change that footprint? And
right.
How could you bring it online? Is there, let alone the data risk and all that, but just the expense management, right?
Yes.
Where the experimental budgets always investigating are coming to an end, and what you're really looking at is how are we going to run this? Right?
Yes.
And how do we run this cheaper? Because money isn't free.
Yeah, money isn't free, but I mean, I think there's a little bit of venture capital angle here as well, right? Like, so, I mean, there's a bit of a land grab going on, right? So if I am inside a enterprise, right? I mean, my interest is to make sure that the stuff works, right? If I go over, like if the ROI doesn't work right now, I'm not super, like, that's not my focus. My focus is to make the customer successful, make the thing work, right? So we are definitely in that phase, in my opinion, right? Like, I mean, just with how frothy the private markets are on the AI front, right? Even public, of course. But I mean, a lot of money is being thrown at a lot of these sort of startups. So some of that money obviously makes its way into a lot of that money makes its way into these projects, right? So I would say the concern, right? I mean, the consolidation that you speak of, I don't see a ton of consolidation in the market, enterprise, in the industry as yet, right? But as we kind of get to a peak euphoria, if you will, right? And there's definitely a lot of people are calling a bubble at the moment, right? So we'll see where these things go. But right after that, when there is a correction, right, a significant correction, is when we're going to see a ton of consolidation, right? And then a lot of people are going to get washed out.
The internet days of early 2000s, right, where there was a correction, right? Where
significant correction at that
everybody
time.
did investigation, and then Webvan went out of business, right? Because Webvan couldn't show how they were going to optimize delivery of food, right? And the value prop just was great. They got a lot of money. Everybody jumped at it because, if it worked, and obviously Amazon book delivery stayed there, and now Amazon delivers everything. So there were successes, but there was a ton of consolidation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the big difference between 2000 and now, I think, is really at that time, Webvan, etc. I mean, it was all about eyeballs and things like that, right? There was very little revenue to show for it. I think today with AI, I mean, there's so much productivity improvement that people are already seeing, right? Like, it's insane, right? Like, you talk to a developer, they tell you that, hey, if I write a piece of code that's going to take me 10 hours, it's going to, Cloud Code will spin it up in 3 minutes, right? And so, I mean, there's just massive orders of magnitude productivity improvement. So I think, some things look different, but like, I don't know, the optical networking build out, telecom build out, over build out that happened then.
Well, I mean, the whole question guys were in the agentic solutions, and that's where everybody's going to struggle, right?
Yes. I think agentic workflows is by far definitely not a solved problem, right? But that's where the money is. That's where, that's the goalpost, next goalpost here for folks. I think that's absolutely where this thing is going, right? And all of that is going to require massively higher orders of magnitude inferencing, right? That's needed, even fine tuning, right? Pre-training, training. That's for, I mean, all the training stuff is for folks who, again, who are doing this at scale, right? Have millions of users and so on and so forth, right? I think we'll definitely, but anyways, inferencing, I mean, is going to be the bread and butter. Everybody is going to be consuming it. Right. So in that kind of situation, right, I think especially for large enterprises, I mean, there's going to be lots and lots of inferencing even within the enterprise. Right. So for all the products that they're building for their customers and internal usage.
Yeah. Every product has to have an AI component to it now. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Every product has to be smart.
Exactly. I mean, right, like AI is going to be baked into every aspect, everything, right? So
anything has a UI, will now have to be, and that's like scale out. Don't put that in the cloud.
Right.
Because it's just going to get too expensive.
It's too expensive.
As
and
things mature and consolidate,
right.
You're gonna have this on-prem.
Right. I think so. Large enterprises definitely. I think on-prem just feels like the right kind of solution potentially. Right. And not to speak of. I mean, you've been sort of, I think, reiterating on the cost. Right. Cost is one, but what about the data security? Right. Like, I mean, security is so much more of an easier question to answer with on-prem stuff. Right. Like, it's just easier. I mean, of course, these cloud providers obviously give guarantees. Not that they don't, but I think.
Well, you have regulations in Europe that just don't let you do that, right? That's one thing.
I mean, they need the server to be in Europe and so on and so
you got to
forth.
be
Right?
in the country,
right?
Borders,
right.
So
and I think some of these cloud providers provide like account for that, but still, I mean, again, it depends. But Eric, you mentioned about the $1,000 sort of GPU PC. So say more. I mean, like. Who's it targeted at? And it was supposed to come out earlier this year. I mean,
So we've got one right here. This is the guy, right? Get one of these mini form guys for $800. Right?
Okay.
And, it's got PCIe slot in it, and we put VCF9 on it, and then we're now making AI GPU on it, which will run some of the models, right? That we've validated, right? So Llama and OpenAI and Anthropic and others, where we build that into VCF9. And so just being able to have that and then vMotion, or we allow you to vMotion GPU workloads around, right? So you can load balance your workloads, and that's targeted at home lab people that want to learn VCF9. Right? So if you're admin architect, and you want to play with it without getting yourself in trouble, right? You don't get in trouble if you're doing it at home. Right? You don't get told no if you're doing it at home, right? And so this is a way for you to get your feet wet on, one, learning enough to get certified, right? Get your home lab license, and then get to play with AI workloads, right? And just have fun. Right?
I see.
So it's not really for anything enterprise or anything to do with anything other than you can have your home machine. And we were looking for under $1,000 so that you don't break your power bank, or your wife doesn't fire you because you're coming home with $1,000 electric bill. Right? And that's what that's for, right?
Gotcha.
And so it's just basically for home lab environments, but
makes sense.
That gets back into when how big is runtime? How much do you need to do runtime? And will runtime get, we're going to see consolidation, but we're going to also see optimization. Right? And, when does runtime get to the point where you can run it on a single GPU environment, right? And they have models to do that today, right? And that's low workload managing. How much GPU resources do we really need?
Right. See, my understanding with a lot of enterprises right now, is that they have a central AI team, right? So that's fairly well understood. Okay, there's only one central AI team, right? But then there's people who are doing experiments all over the place, right? Different teams, right? So, and there's no kind of proper handle on that.
Right.
And for agentic workflows to work, honestly, like all of those things have to come together. So it's kind of a big question on how to corral that together and make sure, right? Again, the compute, the data, and the data, meaning RAG, etc., and the agentic sort of layer that the organization. What kind of thing are you going to build, right? How are you going to leverage it from within the infrastructure, within the organization? I think is a big question. And we haven't even spoken about like MCP and MCP servers and so on. I mean, that has to be sort of kind of taken into account as well, but that's more of an API layer kind of question, probably easier to sort of address. Yeah.
So back to the community podcast, right? I know that you guys struggle with cost management, right? For runtime and for inference, right? And I think you guys are, to the point where now you're going to shut it down too, right? Just because the costs associated with the whole model and inference and agentic workload, where there's real costs to all this.
Yes. I mean, these costs are pretty significant. Even for general purpose compute, it's significant, right? And top of that, right, then there's the token consumption, and at some point you definitely have to sort of make sure that, right, like what you're charging the customer is proportionate to the token usage and all the things that you're having to do. And even a single question that the user might ask might involve 5 different calls to 5 different like sort of APIs and consolidating that answer together, and again making an LLM call for that consolidation.
All of a sudden, one answer costs
Yes.
$3.80.
Yeah, right.
And
Like
then they're sitting there banging on it. Right.
Right. And then, I mean, this is not, this is completely, right, like API driven backends, right? But if you're like having a model that's running on AWS on Bedrock or something, and then, right, like, I mean, that's running in a dedicated fashion. So you got to think about, okay, hey, how much capacity utilization is happening on that model that I'm running, right? Specifically. So there's definitely, I think costs involved. So I think, yeah, on-prem definitely is something we are looking at, and we have to see, if that kind of helps us figure out, what's the right thing to do here. Yeah.
So what, as we come up to the 42-minute mark here of running the podcast, right? And it might not be quite that long because we got a little bit of a late start, but I guess one of the questions we ask you guests that come on the show is what scares you going forward, right? Like what keeps you up at night, right? And where do you think you're going to be going in 2026 as we come to the end of the year of 2025? Like where do you see yourself going? Where do you see the world going around this topic? And then what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just this industry. I mean, AI as a category, I think, is moving so fast, right? I think you really have to keep up. So that's kind of keeps you current, right? What keeps me up at night? I mean, I don't know, like the pace. If you're out of circulation in 2 months, like you would have to have a fresh start. Like, so you really have to stay on top of things. Really, that's my biggest concern. And because I mean, as a technologist, I want to stay relevant.
As a technologist, do you see AI putting yourself out of business?
I am firmly in the camp that it's going to take over more and more parts of our work, right? Which is not a bad thing, honestly. I mean, I'm not certainly scared of that because, you can leverage it, right? Like, so this thing about like managing a manager managing a bunch of agents, right? I think that obviously not obviously, but I think in many organizations that's already true, like on the engineering side, right? Like you could have one coder running 4 Cloud Code desktop instances and each doing its own thing, working on the code, right? Like in parallel, basically. So that I know is already happening, right? So that's like a manager managing agents, right? So we'll just see more and more of that, right? So it putting yourself out of work, it depends on how strategic you are, like how valuable your contribution is. If you are I mean, clearly AI is getting super strategic, right? It's able to think through things, but it also needs a nudge. It needs direction. You need to take it down a rabbit hole. It can go in any rabbit hole, but you got to like direct it,
I personally have my own opinion of this, because I'm an administrator. I'm an IT guy and I'm an administrator, right?
Right.
Run machines and racks, and I still set up machines and install machines and all that.
Right.
And I don't see AI installing any machines anytime soon, right? Like I just don't see it. Right, like I still have to go do a lot of steps to get my machines up, running, configured, booted. I use AI to help me, right? No question. When I'm stuck, I go to AI, right? And I say, hey, I'm stuck.
Right.
It gives me the answer. It's 50% right and 50% wrong.
Right.
Most of the time, I have to ask it 4 more times. Right. Gives me kind of a wrong answer the first time. I change my. Okay, but then it gives me another answer. Oh, it says, "Oh, sorry, you need to run this command." Okay, that command didn't work either. I give them the response. Okay, sorry. And by the 4th iterate, I've finally gotten it to give me enough that I can go.
That's true.
Sometimes, then other times I just look for blog articles because it's like it's frustrating.
It's frustrating,
and so I'm not sure it's gonna.
No, but that's
all more effective. But that is putting me out of work.
No, I mean, again, exactly, right? Like not so soon, but really it's the thinking capacity, right? That is still sort of the leading edge right now with AI, right? Like the system has to think, try something. If it doesn't work, it's going to try something else. That's the iterative capacity that's going to come with agentic workflows, but it has to be independent, right? Like it can't go give a suggestion to a human. The human tries it comes back. No. Right, that's what you're experiencing right now. But imagine if it had access to all the correct tools and it was allowed to run, right, autonomously, then it'll figure out, right? Like that's it. That's the what you are doing is exactly what AI is going to do, right? So look, I mean, honestly, I've been seeing for 2.5 years now, almost 2 years, like it was already doing the work of junior engineers, right? Like junior fresh graduates coming out of school, right? And I think fresh grads have had a hard time finding jobs, right? Like people coming out, computer science graduates,
I
right?
personally think they're having I think they're having a hard time finding jobs because companies think that if they just put AI in it, it'll do it.
No, that's not the thing, right? Like
I'm just not sure they're doing it yet.
No, but like, I mean, people have been using, right? Like whatever, Cursor is newer, but there used to be Windsurf and so on and so forth, right? Like what a junior engineer would do, already the more mid-level or senior engineers were already able to sort of quote unquote replace, but it was never acknowledged, right? But because nobody knows. But in the last, let's say, few months, right, there's more and more sort of acknowledgement that, hey, AI may be having an impact on the employment market. So I would tend to.
I think the hype of AI is having an impact on employment because if I believe as a VP that I can get away not hiring people.
You are going to get it. Of course.
But my company might be suffering, but I'm not aware because I'm a VP and I can't track it yet. And I'm not certain that I think AI is a great coder, but I'm not sure that it builds good product.
No,
so
because product.
The jury's out on whether AI put a pause on hiring because everybody's waiting to go, oh, maybe we don't need these, right? But all of a sudden you find that Webvan doesn't work and, you need to hire a bunch more people, right? Do we hire back those teams we let go? Because honestly, you need more than you think you need, right? The jury's still out on all this.
See, but on some parts, it's not well, again, who knows, right? Like, I mean, at least what I'm going to say is junior level folks, right? What they used to do, now you don't need them. Even on the investment analyst side, lots of things it can do. It's not great. It's something like math is a problem and so on and so forth. And, folks are there, the OpenAI and others are, of course, trying to solve.
I think it's easy to say that. I think that you can put a pause on hiring at any company for 1 or 2 or 3 years, no problem. Just don't hire anybody.
Okay.
People adjust. I've certainly learned that at Broadcom. Broadcom doesn't hire anybody.
Right.
If somebody quits, we don't hire anybody else, right?
Right.
But at some point, it breaks.
Right.
It takes like 5 years for stuff to break. So it's still too early. Everybody.
But in 5 years' time, the AI would have progressed like orders of magnitude tremendously, right?
That and quantum computing. I'm waiting for both of these.
Quantum is
now, I think they're great tools that make everybody more
productive.
I'm more productive.
Yeah, of course.
It takes me 4 iterations. You still need me in the loop.
Yeah.
But then 4 iterations later, I get the answer I want, and I go do it. And it used to take me a day to get the answer. Now it takes me 4 hours. Okay, maybe you don't have to hire me as many.
I mean, I think the relevant thing here is
need me.
Yeah,
you still need IT guys.
No, you do. I mean, I would use the word context engineering, right? Like, I think that is really right. Like, it's not prompt engineering; it's context engineering. Depending on the context that AI has, this is at least what I have seen, right? Like, the better the context, the better the answer, the better sort of it's able to write. Like, so there will be situations where it just doesn't have enough context, and the more context you give with every iteration, it knows, oh, this is what you wanted to do, or this is what you meant, and so on and so forth.
What I found is that then Raspbian OS XYZ changed from a Raspbian XY, and it doesn't know about Z yet, or there isn't enough context for Z, so it gets it wrong. And the reason I have to iterate 4 or 5 or 6 times is that it's just a year behind.
Right? Oh, that's also the problem.
And technology moves,
right.
And it's just always off.
Right.
I couldn't pass my end. I did the VCF9 training, and I tried to pass the NSX end of chapter modules, and I'm not smart enough for networking to kind of get it. So I get to the end of chapter model, and there's like 10 questions. You got to get 80% right. And there's only like 9 questions, which means you can only miss 1 at the end of these training modules. I couldn't do it, so I went to AI. Right, I went, all right, hey, and I typed all the questions into AI, and it gave me the answers. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can answer them and move to the next chapter module, right? And I get credit for getting to the end of the course, right? At Broadcom, like, oh, look, I put them all in. It got 48% right. I missed more than I did just guessing, right? And I was like, holy mother! Like I thought, I tried it again. What I realized is that VCF 9 is just new enough. It was giving me VCF 8 answers, and they were just different enough that you got only 40% right because everything else changed enough, and the AI models have kept up.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And hey, guess what? It matters.
Yes,
And so I'm not sure, but nonetheless, in the data center. Workloads are going to be there. It's going to be that. I think it's a great tool.
Yes.
I think it's an augmenting tool. I think there's a hiring work freeze right now because AI has frozen things.
Yes.
Artificially.
That's what you think.
You're going to see the pendulum swing back, and all of a sudden people are going to be like, yeah, it doesn't get rid of jobs. It just makes everybody move a little faster. Right,
it's definitely a productivity tool, right? I think we are definitely still in the co-pilot phase. If anybody's honest, right? We are in the co-pilot phase, right? When is it going to go on quote unquote autopilot phase, right? Is anybody's guess. But I mean, my sense is that for many workflows, right, and it's going to happen. It is going to be on autopilot, and the way the transition is going to happen is like if a workflow if a chain has like 10 different parts to that workflow. You're going to see it work automatically on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of those, right? And then slowly 4 and 5. Like I think that's how it's kind of gonna go, right?
Yeah,
so it's
I'm just playing devil's advocate. I think there'll be plenty of workloads in the data center. I think there's going to be consolidation.
Absolutely.
I think it's not proven. As things don't work out, you're going to see people bail out of these ideas, and you're going to see less companies doing AI. There will be some that were going to be fantastically successful. There'll be other ones that'll be consolidation. There'll be other ones that you go, well, we like it, but let's stop paying cloud. Let's put that in the data center somewhere and make it run.
Yeah. I think the amount of data centers that are getting built out, I think is insane. Right? The projections are like
confused about this as well, right? Like there's something wrong with this whole scenario. There's going to be consolidation. Like we're building nuclear power plants now, and we're building custom power plants for the AI data centers, so that Grok can give me a better answer. And so I think there's a big, huge investment rush.
Yes,
because the big guys are worried they're not going to be the winner.
Right, absolutely.
I'm not sure anybody's going to be. I think there's a web ban all over the internet.
Okay,
internet,
so you're calling the bubble for sure.
For the bubble to come back to sanity, which when sanity comes, Kubernetes comes, you realize you can just run all this stuff on vSphere. You didn't need massive new data centers. You didn't need all that. You're buying into what NVIDIA CEO's hype, right? Because they're all making money on the hype. Right? We'll see.
I think what you're saying is with vSphere, there's more optimization of the compute, basically, right? Of the GPU, utilization,
you
right?
can just get utilization, and then cut things that aren't working. You get visibility on how many crazy people are trying to run crazy workloads, and you go off, don't need off. Right. Nobody's controlling it. It's a cowboy. It's wild, wild west right now. It's the internet days, right?
Yeah.
Consolidation, visibility, security, all this will play a part in bringing all these workloads back into the data center. And there will be real workloads that survive, and there will be a lot that don't.
Yeah. A lot of it is experimentation, as we said. So certainly, I think we might see something like that. But I don't see the utilization. I don't see the actual volume of inference going down. I definitely don't think so. Even if we were to see a compression in valuations, right, which is what I would call a correction, very well. Of course,
well, just like the internet, then it came back. Real models. Now we have Amazon. Now we have we have banking online. We have everything online. Everything's online now. You got mobile phones. Everything. So I agree that AI will reset and then come back, and there will be true workloads. But they won't be just everybody running them in the cloud. They'll be cost conscious, heavily managed, smart business implementations of AI. Right now we don't have anything smart. We just got everything. let's put another $80 billion into some data centers because
Right.
this is what's going to happen. It's like, okay.
I think one thing we didn't touch on is the application layer, right? Like, so if you're a JP Morgan or a Walmart, right, are you going to use ChatGPT's enterprise version, right? Like to run stuff within your organization and use the agentic workflow layer that ChatGPT has, right? To do all your, let's say, travel reservations, just as an example, right? Like, I don't know, right? Now in that situation, Eric, it's going to be interesting, right? All that compute is running on OpenAI's data centers, basically, and they might use vSphere, but Walmart is not, right? Like, so it's going to be interesting, right? So we'll have to see how this thing evolves, right? The alternate world would be Walmart, right? Like doing something on its own, and hey, no, we are going to build our own model. We'll take an open source model, build it, run it within our VPC, and hey, that's it, right? In our data center. So that's a different reality, right? Or world. So we'll have to see, how things pan out.
Well, as always, Rajesh, thanks for coming on our podcast. And we end up with, you're in Northern California, right? And we do live stream on vBarbecue, so youtube.com/vBarbecue. Okay. So, and we love barbecue. So I'll ask you this, being in Northern California, do you ever get outside, do any kind of barbecue? And if so, what's your go-to barbecue? Give us a barbecue story.
Barbecue story. My kids like corn, and I'm vegetarian, so.
All right. I didn't say yet. I just said barbecue. I didn't say meat. So do you ever get out on the grill? Do you ever
yeah. I have a small grill, not a big one, but love to. My wife sort of loves to marinate veggies, right? And it's lovely. So I put it on the skewer, corn. That's usually sort of our go-to barbecue. Some summer, late summer.
I like corn. A lot of the restaurants now have just corn, barbecue corn that they cut off the cob and just give you a beautiful corn with your steak, right? And it's been grilled, right? So it's a go-to.
You like it?
My
too.
favorite.
Okay.
It's my favorite veggie grill.
I see.
No question about that. Corn on the cob, grill it, and then just slice it off, and you're good to go. Right.
I love it as well.
And I have been eating more fresh these days, right? I wouldn't call myself a vegetarian yet, but I would say that 80% or 70% of my eating now is either some fish, right? Or vegetables with fish, vegetables with a little bit of protein, but
that's awesome.
Tomatoes, cucumbers, fresh avocados, mangoes, sliced mangoes, with just like a lot of freshness. I call it fresh, right? But a bit more dairy. I think we do, cream cheeses and a lot of more cream cheeses with it, which gets your protein up on the, which I know isn't really vegetarian, but it's a much more fresh,
I'm not vegetarian
model, and less. I don't think I put on heavy meat on the barbecue for a while now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
And here's a tip. The Indian twist to the barbecue corn barbecuing corn is you put once it kind of gets cooked a little bit, put lemon and salt. So take the lemon dipped in lemon and salt and chili powder, red chili powder. So
you gotta have some heat in there.
yes. So it's awesome.
Rajesh Kadam, thanks a lot for coming on the VMware Community Podcast. We'll pay attention to where you go next, and maybe we'll get you back in a year or so and hear what your AI stories are. Thanks for giving us some AI insight on the models and what you've experienced in the AI space, as well as PipeIQ and the consolidation that's happening and data center migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. Great to chat with you.
Everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll be back in next week.